Hi, I'm here on the South Lambeth Estate with Dreenagh. Dreenagh, I hear you may have been having the odd problem with Homes for Lambeth. What's going on here?
It is a little bit. If you can see, we're the far end of 3-4 flats.
Okay.
And these are purpose-built flats, flagship purpose-built flats for people with disabilities.
Right.
So when this idea came of building a block of flats in our front yard that are actually too close to the building for them to have electric charging points,
Right.
which is a bit odd because I thought Lambeth were a green council, but besides that, these are purpose built. So I said, let's work out what mitigations we're going to have for these people, because they're legally entitled to reasonable adjustments. And I said, if you get them right, it's going to work for everyone in the building. Sound, equipment, how you make, what you do, whatever. They completely refused. And we nagged and nagged and nagged, and eventually once the work started, they started talking mitigation, but mitigation is no good once the work starts. If you look out here, I don't know if you can see through, it took me a number of years to get our blue bay badges. For everyone along here has a blue badge.
Okay.
We had 3 spaces there. We were promised they would come back. We've just found out the space is there at the end of the driveway. And if you follow me down, my daughter, you saw her, she's totally blind, she's got mobility, she needs to walk on someone's hand, she needs 2 people, so we've got a walker. Normally we would go just down here and we can have taxis, therapists, cars, whatever, whoever's taking her, we can have it parked there. And we just come out the gate and go round there. By the way, the gate's still broken.
Hi, I'm from Refurbish Don't Demolish. I'm here with Dreenagh and Cynthia.
And Viv, actually.
Hi Viv, nice to meet you. If that's okay to put you on our film.
Yeah, you got it.
What happened to your son the other day, please?
Yeah, my son got stuck in the lift for 1 hour.
Wow.
Apparently, the concierge was phoning Lambeth Council. They said their system was down.
Yeah.
They said they couldn't come till 1 hour. Then after 1 hour, the concierge phoned the fire service. They come and
They
Right.
eventually came.
came and let him out. But I emailed Lambeth Council. None of them replied my email.
Okay. Who's responsible for the sort of confusion and chaos that's going on here on South Lambeth Estate?
Who would you say?
I don't know. I emailed the ones that I saw.
We were told that the new housing management is now run by what they call the livability team. And we were told that the livability team, which is Guy Sanderson, another woman, Louise, and another woman who's the housing officer, Rashida. So we were told that Guy was the bridge between Homes for Lambeth and Lambeth. And we still don't understand what that means. Because now it's as if Lambeth have taken over the engagement process from Homes for Lambeth.
And in your opinion, what is it like living on a Lambeth estate that is being so-called regenerated by Homes for Lambeth? What's the experience like for residents?
It's like hell. Everything is broken down. You keep on calling. They don't even respond. They don't treat this place nicely.
Right. So they're building a massive block of flats here in front of your block of flats.
Yeah, it has taken a junk space.
Right.
We don't even have space.
Yeah.
Because what they've actually taken, that was a car park and 2 green spaces
Yeah.
where they built it. But there was a driveway, that was our driveway. What we didn't realise was that they were going to take over right up to here. We thought they were only going to take over that much.
So you've lost this space
We've lost
here.
everything.
Yeah.
We've lost all of our
Yeah.
driveway. And we've got, I don't know what, no one can explain what that is.
What's the engagement with residents like here? You know.
We've struggled.
Yeah.
There was a thing called a resident engagement panel. Viv was on it, I was on it. We had 6 residents on it. We attended for 6 years, and then out of the blue, they decided, they kept trying to go online, and we kept saying, look, there's a lot of us out on cameras, we don't want to go online. And then they, out of the blue, they come up with this thing called a new protocol, a 35-page protocol. And we had some, well, and they came up with this protocol that we had questions about, and they wouldn't answer the questions. And it was weird, wasn't it? And then they said things like, oh, well, you don't need the protocol, you just have to come and sign a code of conduct form, which I don't know what that meant, but in that period, they made everything go online. And even people who didn't have a computer, they were saying they could go to the office over there, sign a piece of paper, and that would mean they could get online. They didn't even do that. It was like, it was as if they wanted, and now they're saying, right, it was as if they didn't want us to be at the REP. They made all these promises. I'm not saying this very well. They made all these promises. Yeah. We met with a woman from HFL, senior woman. She made up this action tracker of what she was going to do. So we kept waiting for that. In the meantime, she got sick. So we just thought it was delayed. But then it turned out she left, and we've had no response to what's happened to that. And out of the blue, they just said, instead of the resident engagement panel, they're going to have monthly drop-in sessions.
Well, the idea is that, I mean, there were two alternatives in Lambeth's mind. One is that they demolish your block of flats. The second is what they're doing here on South Lambeth, which is they're building a massive, great big block of flats right opposite where you live. You would call it infill, but really we all know that these new flats are really for private sale. Yes. And I can't imagine what it's been like living next to this building site.
It's a bit weird because we've just discovered that block is going to be 30 flats, and they said 25 of them, because of the way they got the funding from the GLA, they have to provide 25 of those to be council level rent.
Right.
But we've just found out, we were told when they started that they were going to keep this block, they were going to demolish the low-rise 101 flats and replace them, and probably an extra 100 or 150 at one stage, they were saying, council level things. Now we found out there's going to be 25 there. The next phase there is going to include a proper tower block, 17 to 20 stories. It's going to be about 300 and something flats. And then the last one is, I don't know how many, but out of all of those, there's only going to be an additional, is it 20 or 30 council level rents in that phase? So out of, eventually, this whole project is only going to have maybe 45, 50 council flats.
Well, that may be a good use of the council's hundreds of millions that they're intending to borrow, and all these council level rent homes that are unaffordable.
We've lost 100 flats, and we've been replaced with 50 if we're lucky.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's why we need to see the equalities impact assessment, but for some reason it still hasn't been published. It was ready. We saw the draft of it at the beginning of the year, and what it showed in that was, as Cynthia said, people were quite welcoming of this at the beginning. They thought the flats need working on. We bought into the idea that Lambeth want to get people off their housing list. We're all agreeing with it. But as time wore on and we saw everything they promised disappeared, and that person would leave, then another person would come in, and it's just been, we were supposed to be key stakeholders, and we've been pushed out of the whole process. They went into Saturday morning working with no consultation and told us it was a pilot, but it just went non-stop, didn't it? So it's just been a tirade. We had a woman, I told you, she died of a stress-induced stroke. My daughter's been in a crisis, a mental health crisis, for nearly 3 years. We've got people in the building who have told me that their mental health got worse because the building was shaking when they were doing all the drilling and the thing. The whole building was shaking. We've got people, I've got tiles all came down in my bathroom. The guy came to check. So all this sort of stuff, but no follow-up.
Welcome to the wonderful world of Homes for Lambeth. I'm going to stop there.
Installed in here, the fire system is inside the concierge when it should be out, and it's got a design fault, so this screen keeps coming down and they can't get it up. The people didn't rehang the door, so as you can see, fire door keeps shut.
Right.
It's stuck open because it's not hung properly. See? So it doesn't shut.
Lovely craftspersonship there.
So we have nagged and nagged and nagged, and when they finally sent someone down to repair it, the guy turned up with a screwdriver. He wasn't even told the extent of the actual job. So telling people to turn up from Responsive Repairs with a screwdriver is not going to rehang a fire door.
So this is a fire hazard.
Well, what do you think that is?
Wow.
I don't even know where to start with that.
That does not look great.
It's not good, is it? Sorry. It looks kind of dangerous to me.
I don't know. It could be the electrics for the fire door. It could be the control system.
Right, it's meant to be. The system is meant to, and also this. That's not. Look, that was supposed to be fixed.
Well,
It's meant to be the security of the building. Do you see? You're
Yeah.
meant to use a key fob to get in.
okay.
So there is no security to the building now, which is why we've got increased antisocial behaviour.
It would be
Because
funny
people
if it
can come
wasn't
in
so
and out.
serious,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And we nagged about making it fire safe. So what they did was screw up the temporary fire door that was supposed to have been replaced. That shouldn't have been there. It was just a temporary door. And there's my poor friend trying to get out. There you go. Some people can get out. But as you can see, it's just, I mean, look. This is broken, the window's broken. The fire brigade, because we don't have a 24-hour concierge, the fire brigade, that went off. The fire brigade had to break the window to get into there, and it still hasn't been repaired.
But Dreenagh, this whole project is costing tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah, and you'll like this, all of this work was done by a firm called Engie. For some reason, they won't tell us, the work stopped at one stage, the workmen walked off site at one stage, it got taken over, and we never understood why in the last months by Homes for Lambeth.
So we're still here on the South Lambeth Estate. Now, Homes for Lambeth have built a massive, great big block on the other side of this block, and that's blocked the emergency access. So what they've kindly done is built some other kind of entrance. Dreenagh, what's going on with this entrance they've built?
It's very hard to understand because they've built, this is what we waited 2.5 years for, and we've got no ramp, we've got water pooling, we've got people with children with disabilities who have no way to access the building, and we have a design fault clearly. This has only just been done, these steps, and look, they've even been repaired. Look, and there's still, look, someone's going to have an accident.
How do people supposedly access
Struggle.
this building?
Struggle. The only way
Yeah.
an ambulance
Yeah.
can come is here.
Right.
So we've got a lot of people with mobility needs and with illness in the building. So when they come out, Cynthia, who you met earlier,
Yeah.
she was helping another friend whose husband had a stroke. The ambulance took 2.5 hours to get here because they couldn't find their way. A combination of no entrance and the low traffic neighbourhood, which we were lucky enough to get at the top of Dorset Road, which is right outside that building around the corner. So what they're doing, people are struggling and dragging, older women dragging their elderly husband in the wheelchair up these steps to get him into the building. This is disgusting.
But a cynical person might say that Homes for Lambeth don't care about
I don't
vulnerable,
think anyone
disabled
cares.
people.
Homes for
Yeah.
Lambeth don't care, Lambeth don't care. Nobody cares. If they cared, they would have actually met with us. They would have answered us. They would have provided mitigations. They would have answered our questions. We've still got hundreds of outstanding questions that we would take. We, the three of us and 3 others, religiously attended their resident engagement panel because we believed them that if we went and asked clear questions, all we ever wanted was information in a clear and timely fashion. That was the main thing we ever asked for, and some input into what they were doing, some scrutiny of what they were doing. And instead, the result has been we've been pushed and pushed and pushed away.
Here we are on South Lambeth Estate. We're looking at the lovely, fabulous community room that Homes for Lambeth have kindly provided for residents. What's going on here, Dreenagh?
I don't quite know how to hold the door open. What people have been doing. Oh, sorry. People were using this, but this isn't such a good idea because when we had the children's activities, you know, it's not good for kids to have that because then they start knocking and falling over. So,
What about a wheelchair access?
yeah, this is the wheelchair access.
Lovely.
Unfortunately, the door is broken. It was never compliant in the first place. We have no understanding why there's a ramp. If you come, you can see the ramp goes the wrong way. The ramp goes into the Hill car park.
Nice.
So when people like our neighbour who's in a mobility scooter, when he comes down the ramp, he has to do a sharp right turn. He won't be able to. There's not enough room, even though they've widened it by another 4 inches. which is so magnanimous of them. I don't understand, and other people have said this, why wasn't the ramp going the other way, where there is actually a curbside where you could draw up a car if someone was disabled? They could get out, they could get their wheelchair, and they could come straight in. They could have asked me, because I am an expert in disability issues, but they didn't. This door needs to be compliant, so if someone in a wheelchair came up, the door is motorised and opened. For some reason they call this a disabled toilet. I'm not really clear how it is, but if they wanted to really make it disabled, they would have made it a changing rooms. I don't know if you know of many adults that would fit on a baby changing bench. That's not how you change an adult, or deal with an adult's personal care who's disabled.
But you could
they could have asked us, but they didn't.
You could be forgiven for thinking that these things are just a bit of an afterthought.
Well, also, quite an interesting thing here is that we were told when they replaced, they just did a whole thing of retracing our what are they called, the intercom, the fob to get into the house. We used to have a video entry. They told us that the video entry is an outmoded system. So why are they putting an outmoded system into the new block over the road?
Well, it says South Lambeth Estate Transformation Plans and Developments.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're still on the South Lambeth Estate. I'm here with Dreenagh and another resident talking about the way that residents have been treated and really the plans for South Lambeth going forward. What do you think's going on? If you two could please just give us a bit more information.
I think we've asked for something as basic as a timetable for years.
How many times?
And they had no idea what's going on. And all the issues that we faced with phase one, which is this big block in front of Wimborne House, we flagged as potential issues that we wanted to deal with before they started building. Yeah. And so that's having mitigation in place, reasonable adjustments, noise and dust quality, being able to get involved with the design of the actual building. We were also asking about the boundaries as well, like how close is the phase one building going to be to Wimborne House.
And it was about who's managing who, because they told us Lambeth are going to stay managing Wimborne House and Homes for Lambeth are going to manage that block. So we said, who's going to manage the in-between? That was where the boundary issue came. Now they knew all that time ago that the boundary was right up here by our front door, and yet they let us believe that the boundary was over there all that time.
And what's the big dilemma now is that they want to crack on with doing phase two, which will be worse than phase one, because phase one was just building on an empty space. Phase two is going to be a demolition. They're unwilling to kind of learn and take from the lessons and all the mistakes they've made with phase one, and they just want to bulldoze over phase two and just knock it over and start moving people in. I think another one of our concerns is that whilst doing this, they chose not to. There's no engagement, no consultation, no discussion for years.
I've been asking and asking because it said in the latest newsletter that there's been workshops. Throughout, on that little timeline, it said throughout 2022 there have been workshops with an S, plural, and consultations, plural, and all I can find is that one workshop that Paige Collins did, who's now left. And that was to do with phase two. So what are the consultations? I don't know whether they mean when people just turn up on a Tuesday and ask a question, is that considered a consultation?
It isn't considered a consultation because they have what they call drop-in sessions in the green shop. But we were told point blank from the independent advisor and from the engagement officer that they were not allowed to engage at all. So they will sit in an empty shop for hours and do nothing at a time that wasn't even workable for most people.
And with no consultation, they spent £78,000 of Lambeth money on doing up the shop.
Oh, that's the famous £78,000. Yeah,
that's a famous green shop that remains closed for practically all of the week, apart from a
Tuesday,
chunk of hours,
11
to 4 when it's remained open. I think another one of our concerns, where they've done like some sort of fake consultation, is about the residents and how they're mixed across the different properties. Yeah. There's something called a local letting plan, and what we wanted to, as residents, is to be able to input in it. And what we sort of found by what they've proposed is that they're going to divide residents. So you're going to have a council block, you're going to have a shared ownership block, and then you're going to have a block where no council tenants or anything will be allowed to reside in. And we're sort of saying, well, why are you splitting up the community? I mean, you've already sort of demolished the community. Why are you doing it?
I know, because they took us to that one that they'd had an input to in Kennington, and there was a stuff in the news about how the people in the what do you call the people in
poor doors?
Well, they weren't poor doors. They were the people in the council block weren't allowed to access the playground.
Yeah, I remember.
Because that was, you had to go through the...
Yeah.
Well, they told us this was all going to be open plan, and yet, and I still would love to know how this is, because I own my daughter and I own our flat. It's a right to buy. And I woke up one morning, I wasn't told this, my bedroom is right at the end of the block, and my daughter goes in there to get away from the noise out the front, that started smashing up all the concrete blocks on that end of the thing. They've actually built a brick wall attached to my wall without telling me or asking my permission or agreement or whatever, and that wall is to stop people walking around the block. So they're actually enclosing that as their own little area.
I mean, when we sort of kicked off, we were given the impression that we were sort of key stakeholders and we were having a say.
They told us, it says in the planning permission, key stakeholders.
We've been inviting senior people from HFL from every sort of level to engage and to kick off engagement again, because we sort of want to, even if we're not, you're not going to give us a say, can we at least understand? Can you just imagine you're living in one of these blocks here, you have no information and you're seeing, buildings being smashed down, stuff being erected, and you don't have a single clue about what's going on. And even talking to personnel.
You weren't even told. In the low-rise blocks, they weren't even told about the demolition that was taking. So they'd all sort of suddenly come to and see all this massive equipment arriving and all this noise and whatever. You've got a lot of older people in that block who just didn't know what was going on.
It's strange because they did a qualities and impact assessment at the beginning, and people were reasonably amenable to the whole process. We had someone else come onto the estate at the beginning of this year and write an qualities and impact assessment, and he was just in awe about how the deterioration in the sentiment of residents and the quality of what's been produced by Lambeth and HFL. They were completely, absolutely...
Two sides having construction on both sides and all that constant noise. During lockdown, I had upstairs, we've got surgeons, people who work in A&E, who were working in COVID wards and couldn't sleep because they'd come home, they're doing shift, they couldn't sleep here because the noise is so bad. I know another chap that used to sleep somewhere way up near his work, up near Sydenham, because he couldn't sleep here on his day off because they couldn't get any time.
Yeah, but Lambeth and HFL are sort of well aware of the ramifications. I think they intentionally bought this, decided to target the estate because when they did their qualities and impacts, they know it was a bunch of elderly people, a bunch of sort of maybe migrant sort of workers. And so, they're easy to target.
People who aren't digitally, they knew.
Because their consultation, when they did the qualities and impact assessment, we sat in with residents, and this is the beginning of this year, and the guy who was commissioned to do the work sort of pointed out clearly that there are basic things that Lambeth and HFL can do starting from today that they should be doing if they want to take positive steps forward. And what Lambeth and HFL have chosen to do instead is to sit on the report and not publish it. So they know fair well what they're doing is incorrect. And they've now taken this sort of vow of silence where they're just refusing to engage or communicate with residents.
They won't come to our TRA meeting. I didn't know that they could refuse. I'm very confused. But Lambeth and Homes for Lambeth, we've got it in writing that they said, and it's based on, weirdly, they've based that on...
sort of an incorrect accusation about...
Apparently, there's an accusation. It's all confusing because on one hand we were told it was an anonymous, Tim Fairhurst said in his response that it was an anonymous accusation and that in hindsight they should have investigated it before they took action. But on the other hand, the other woman, the RPO, she said very clearly it was more than one, there were at least two, and she had emailed the people who made the complaint, and she said if they don't get back to us by return email, we're going to drop the charge. What
this is something
who was it against?
Me
Yeah.
and the TRA.
It was against
it said the TRA. It said that I was running disruptive TRA meetings.
Well, it's not the only estate where something like this has happened. I'm going to stop there for just a second.
Yeah.
So this is South Lambeth Estate. What's the name of this block here, please?
I was thinking they could probably get a sign up there saying Wimborne House.
Wimborne House, that would be nice.
I keep forgetting to tell Rashida, a big sign. This is Wimborne House, and this is where the people who live there, the daughter is in a, like a specially made wheelchair, and it's a real, you can see, how does he get the wheelchair up? Where do you go? Where's the ramp? And then he has to manoeuvre. My daughter's blind with mobility issues. How does she go? We've got at least 4 people with wheelchair users in the block and mobility aids. So they're going to scrabble around and scrabble around and scrabble around. How do you get through here? How do you... We have no understanding why the ramp goes this way and not that way, where there is a little walkway, and you could pull up a car there. You could pull up and get your wheelchair out. So I've got no understanding why this... There was no consultation, by the way.
No.
This was meant to be refurbishing of our existing caretaker's hut. They just told us it was going to refurbish and it was going to be at the original angle that it was, but instead they decided not just to demolish the hut, they dug down to the base of the building, of the, what's it called, where they...
The foundations.
The foundations. Yeah. And this woman who lived on that floor was, I've still got her, people tell you, she'd be ringing me every day, terrified, living on her own. This poor woman, terrified, the building shaking, thinking she was going to collapse. And they eventually moved her. 2 days later, she had a stroke and died.
So if you, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
I was going to say, if you're trying to help somebody with mobility problems walk along here side by side, that's not going to be easy, is it?
It's not. I came back the other day with my daughter. I didn't have a worker that day. I had bags like this and I was managing her. For some reason, the minute we get to here, they start angle grinding. I don't understand why they couldn't have done all that angle grinding off-site somewhere. We've had it relentlessly for months. My daughter was howling, so I'm struggling up here to get through with her. As you walk, you think if you go through, how could you get, you can't walk across like that. You can't do it. So you imagine you're coming up here, which not today has to do with the wheelchair, you're lugging it through here. This is what they've decided to extend it magnanimously, an extra couple of inches. Look, they said that, they were going to make it that much wider, because that's supposed to help us. Look, 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 look. And then, the other day, look at this. I said to the guy, as it was so, there was like a bit space like that round there, and I said to the guy, excuse me, could you move for my daughter? And he goes, I'm told him about it. He wanted me to drag her through this little gap. And I said, mate, I'm just asking you, why can't you do it? Because, oh, you've got a problem. So then I put it in and said, yes, I have got a problem. My problem is that my daughter has been so negatively and horrendously impacted by this, and nobody can actually, what's the word? Have the slightest regard. That's what I don't understand. Look, look, look. He's got to wiggle around here to get her in there. People have to struggle around here. This was all out to, you can see it was all out to here the other day. To there. I don't know what, no one's explained to us what this is.
No, it's a strange structure.
But I think they're trolling my daughter, because why they've got that little thing for blind people there, I have no understanding. So is that meant to be lined up with our entrance? Is that what they think? That's pathetic. Because we used to be able to just walk out here and go onto Dorset Road.
Right.
So we've lost our gap. And then they were told us they were going to cut, see up where the bus stop is? They said they were going to cut a gate in that part of the wall so people could get access. Because I don't know if you know about this, Luke, but apparently there is a law, or there's some planning rule that says when you create somewhere, you've got to have the shortest egress to the main road. People now have to go all the way down there, all the way down Cobbett, all the way down, all up to get to that bus stop that you can see just over there.
Wow.
So why have they done that? That's not done in it with key stakeholders in mind, is it?
I think that's the point. We weren't consulted really on anything,
weren't
especially for the whole
consulted
hills. Just completely just went off.
Just dived ahead.
on a tunnel on their own sort of free will to just do whatever they wanted with phase one.
No, not like that.
No one, I haven't seen inside this property. No one was consulted about how it was going to be set up.
Nothing.
Absolutely no clue. But then they're trying to pressure people to now moving to this property when they had no say. When they did start, Hill said we've got an engagement panel. We have this.
Yeah, and Hill even believed that we had the rear entrance, because the first newsletter we got from Hill said, "Will people please use the rear entrance?"
I think there's someone was disingenuous with what they were saying, because
Yeah.
before they kicked off works, they even had a diagram up which said, actually, guys, you now have to use the back entrance. But as you would know, because we told you
There was
that
nothing.
two constructions going on all at once.
Done.
But I don't think that makes sense. If you're a reasonable builder, do you not assess the site? Do you just come and start building and say, "Oh, use something," and you haven't even looked?
I think they were told to absolutely ignore us.
Either they're just completely lying, or they're just completely terrible at what they do.
So what were you saying about the way that you've been treated by the contractors here, Dreenagh?
Appalling. I honestly think that they were just told to stick their fingers in their ear and just rush on and ignore us. We had this kind of, this was all boarded up. This is only just, you can only see through now. This is all boarded up. And we were, well actually it was our neighbour here that was saying, you don't want to have it like that because it will just turn into a little drug den, which anywhere you'll find a little, something turns into a little drug den. So we're talking about how wonderful life is here under regeneration.
Oh, of course.
You love it, don't you? It's fabulous.
Have a good evening.
You too, thank you.
I mean, Dreenagh sort of makes the point about them sort of having this sort of enclosed, but they at one point, like they left it. They didn't even have, you know, that they had this layer of sort of protection.
Yeah.
Certain parts of the site wasn't even protected, so they had piles of sand while they were building,
Yeah.
and it was just blowing
everywhere.
blowing everywhere.
They had an asphalt fire in there, and there was black smoke everywhere. They didn't even come and say to the concierge, so everybody in the block was terrified. They had a massive crane that in the wind, it would go veering over to the block. No one did anything. They send us these updates, like for instance, they send us an update saying that they were going to spend the 15th, that's the latest, we haven't had any updates since then, saying that they were going to remove all of that on the 15th of July. And I nearly took my daughter away for that week because I thought, get her away while they do all of this noise. I'm so glad I didn't, because look, where are we now?
Still there.
End of September, it's still there. So hey, hooray for Lambeth.
We were sort of concerned, even when it sort of goes back even further, because residents were supposed to be given a say on who the contractor was.
God.
They sort of let John, who you sort of met briefly, sort of feed into it, but they kind of disregarded his, his concerns. There was another resident who had looked into Hills and found he had all these issues with one of the properties they had sort of built before, and flagged it, and he was completely just kind
Francesco,
of... Yeah, he was pushed to the side and said, actually, no, I don't know what you're talking about, and they just carried on. Lambeth and HFL, before they appointed them, said, oh, don't worry, residents, you're going to have a say,
have so much
you're going
say,
to feed
you're
back
gonna
in,
have so much.
you're going to look into the mitigations, you're going to have X, Y, and Z. And then when push comes to shove, they just kind of completely done exactly what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Residents were completely
completely
ignored
overridden,
in every sort of aspect of what was going on. From basic training to understand the construction plans and the mitigations wasn't really given. From actually being able to talk to the contractors to get some proper real feedback about what's going on, never happened. They had their engagement panel that they engagement team that they set up, wasn't responsive at all. So I mean, they're probably the worst kind of
I
people.
emailed their liaison email for like 2 years, no answers. Ever.
So I mean, they're probably not the best people to have on site.
The most recent was when I emailed them about the officer or the workman telling me I had a problem because I had asked them to move the fence, and they messaged me to say that someone from Homes for Lambeth would be calling me between Thursday and Monday. So it's Tuesday today, isn't it? I'm still waiting. They haven't called. Now we've got about 5
So this is the Homes for Lambeth box set, Series 4, Episode 7. Dreenagh, what's going on here?
Well, this was originally our community garden, and at the time we set it up years ago, and we set it up with Edibility, Lambeth Edibility, and we're only allowed to use the space as long as we had the raised beds. So we did it in raised beds for years, and then all this started. We used to get our water from the caretaker's hut, but then they closed that up for demolition, so we had no water source. And at the same time, Guy, the new livability manager, told a group of residents that was going to be a car park because there was nowhere for people to park whilst all that was a construction site. So this all just went to nothing. But then whilst he was saying it was going to be a car park, someone else was telling another resident that he could just dig into the ground. So he started planting, good on him, planting his potatoes, but we were told for however 10, 20 years that you're not allowed to plant in the thing. But new broom sweeps a bit clean, and 1 minute it's a car park, next minute. But then of course this whole area, if you look, this block, that square of the trees in the garden is all going to become the next phase, which is going to be a lovely tower block of about 17 stories, maybe more, and 7 stories. And in the middle of that is going to be a little square with, actually, Paige told me very excitedly, there's going to be a swing and a plot
Sounds
for
lovely.
a vegetable. So
It's, our sort of the predicament that we're having with these two blocks is that there is no sort of, they've made it such a mess just erecting a block, so we're completely scared that now
that if
they're
they've
going to
made
have
a
to
mess on
demolish
that,
and build.
what are they
Yeah.
going to do there?
They're going to completely make a complete shambles.
Surely
of
not.
this.
Surely not.
They tried
And
to
that's
kick
only
up
the
shambles.
next phase, and then there's another phase after that.
Is there a master plan for this?
There's an outline
Yeah.
planning.
So they had some sort of consultation.
I think
but
it's called Make It
instead
Up
of
As You
using
Go
the
along
consultation
planning.
as an opportunity to find out, what mitigations and what procedures they should have in place, they were asking people to pick the colour of the bench and
Yeah,
what trees you want
yeah.
here.